Hello, everybody, and welcome to this quick review episode of Star Wars Lads. This is a special that has been coming for a while now. If you've been keeping up with our channel, you know that I picked up on the day it came out, Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil, as you see back here. And it's a long book. Oh my gosh, it's a long book, but it is a great book. It's 550 pages, and I promised a review, and here it is. I finally finished it during the Thanksgiving weekend holiday. And so I'm going to dive in right now. Non-spoilers. This will be non-spoilers. If you'd like to hear me talk spoilers, let me know down in the comments below. I'm happy to talk spoilers and happy to do a full spoiler review, spoiler discussions, live spoiler discussion. If you're interested in anything like that, comment below, let me know, and we can see about doing that in the future. Also, comment below, let me know what you thought of Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil. Try to stick spoiler free for the most part. If you use spoilers, put the spoiler warning up so people in the comments who haven't read the book don't get spoiled by your comment. But I would love to interact with you guys and talk spoilers down below. And then also hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for Star Wars content 3 days a week. We post videos usually Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but this one's coming to you special on Tuesday. To get into Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil, if you're not familiar with what this trilogy is, this is the third book in the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. Basically, the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy is a prequel trilogy that Timothy Zahn, the original writer of Thrawn, and who's written all three prior canon Star Wars Thrawn novels, Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason, he decided to write an origin story for Thrawn, basically. Not as much in the way as Outbound Flight was for Thrawn and Legends and kind of his time in the Empire. This is more the origin story of Thrawn as he enters the Navy, as he climbs up through the ranks of his family, as he navigates the politics and the wars and everything that's going on in his original government, the Chiss Ascendancy. The Chiss Ascendancy, similar to the Empire or the Republic or any of these other governments, is a massive, massive government that controls dozens of planets, is in control of hundreds of people. The Chiss are the main species that is in charge of this, and these governments in the unknown regions are not super friendly with extraterrestrials or aliens. They don't really like interacting with aliens or anyone, but Thrawn has a way of doing things his way. He's kind of a rogue in that sense. He doesn't really follow the rules. A lot of people in the Syndicure don't like him. The Syndicure is basically this elite group of ruling families. There are 9 families that rule the Syndicure, and then there are 40 total that make up the Syndicure. The 9 are the ones with the most power, the most political power, the most military power, and they control everything, basically. And then there are 31 other families there that are trying to make it up to that 9. Most of them don't like Thrawn and his unorthodox way of going about things. Thrawn is part of the Chiss Expansionary Defense Fleet, which is basically a unified military force of all the families that's not really supposed to answer to any one family in particular. Everyone's supposed to put their family politics aside in defense of the Chiss Ascendancy as a whole. Obviously, not everyone does that, but Thrawn does, and Thrawn isn't liked for doing that for the most part. So if you saw my review for Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good, you know that my favorite thing about this is really that this trilogy doesn't really feel like Star Wars, which I think is a breath of fresh air. It might turn a lot of people off, and it has turned me off at times while reading this. And I mentioned in Greater Good that it wasn't necessarily my favorite. I didn't like it as much as Chaos Rising because Thrawn is really only in about, I would say, 40%, maybe 50% of the book. There's so many other characters, and this is such an expansive world. Zahn is really trying to create something here that's really unique, but also kind of fills in a nice gap of the Star Wars galaxy, which is the unknown regions, which we, as the name implies, don't really know anything about. The unknown regions have kind of remained a mystery to us throughout our time in Star Wars, and it's nice to get this a little bit more fleshed out. Although the Chiss Ascendancy really want to, as I said earlier, confine themselves to their planets and their people. They don't want to deal with other people. Everyone else is hostile to them. And one of our hostile opponents who's been set up throughout these 3 books and in the previous books that took place during the Rebels timeline are the Grisks, which are an elite group of aliens who have these incredible war machines, and the main one, the leader, military leader at least, that we see in this trilogy is named Jixtus, and he's in the shadows throughout the first 2 novels. And then in Lesser Evil, we see a lot of Jixtus, and I thought that was great. He's a menacing figure We really get a lot of cool scenes with Jixtus and his subordinates and the people he's trying to conquer. And we get to see his lust for power. We get to see him go one-on-one with Thrawn. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is as exciting as we thought it would be. And Jixtus and the Grisks are kind of just symptomatic of what this thing does as a whole. It just really beautifully lays nice groundwork for a fantasy universe that can exist in Star Wars, but doesn't necessarily have to feel like Star Wars, but still has enough Star Wars to where you can kind of understand it if you're a Star Wars fan. But as I've said in many of my other book reviews, I listen to a lot of these on audiobook, and especially this one. I had to listen to this one on audiobook, at least partially, because this audiobook was 23 and a half hours. As I said, the book is 550 pages. So in order to get this review out even semi-timely, as it's been almost 2 weeks now since the book came out, I had to listen to it in my free time. I had to read it when I was at home. I had to listen to it in the car. I had to listen to it on a walk or something. I had to make sure I was consuming this book as much and as fast as possible. But even at times with this Ascendancy trilogy, I find myself as a listener having to take a step back a bit. I usually listen on double speed because I'm so used to Mark Thompson's voice, who's incredible in this audiobook, by the way. I highly recommend it. Anything he does is phenomenal. He's done the Heir of the Empire trilogy as well. If you want to listen to the early Thrawn stuff, he's so good. But anyway, I had to take a step back because I usually listen to this on double speed because I'm so used to his voice. I know the Star Wars mythology inside and out. I know everything that's happening. So even if I miss a couple words or something, I'm still able to understand what's going on in the story. There's so many new characters. There's so many families. There's so many species. There's so many things that don't exist in our main Star Wars galaxy that you kind of have to take a bit of a step back, and I had to lower the speed, slow it down a bit, because you miss a lot of things if you listen to it too fast because there's so many new details thrown at you. And as someone who's really, devoted a lot of time to existing in the Star Wars universe, that is awesome. It's cool to learn all this new stuff. It's cool to have this area of the galaxy that feels like it's just Zahn's, and he can go there and he can do whatever he wants, and he can just explore this. And I think in Lesser Evil, I appreciated it the most out of all three of these novels, more so than I did especially in Greater Good. Because if you watch my review for Greater Good, you know that it wasn't necessarily my favorite book. I felt, as I said, Thrawn was sidelined for so many other things like the Agbui and all this stuff that worked really well in the plot, but I just found myself a little more bored by the politics and more bored by the military stuff and way more interested in what is Thrawn going to do to solve this problem that he has to figure out. And in this, I think maybe because of the groundwork he laid in Greater Good, I was more accepting that this wasn't a Thrawn novel completely. Like, Thrawn is still the main character and he still does a lot of things, but he also in this book only has probably 50% of the page time, maybe 55 or 60, but he's not the only character in this. We have Admiral Aralani, we also have Cheery the Skywalker, and Thalius, her caregiver. The rest of the military is also really interesting as well. We've got Mid-Captain Samacro. We've got Rosku in this, who is a new character. There's a lot of really fascinating characters in this story that really build up this world. And if you take the time and understand, as I more so did in Lesser Evil, because Chaos Rising still has predominantly Thrawn appearances. It's mostly to do with Thrawn. There are other characters, there are other politics, there are other things happening. But that book focuses on Thrawn, where Greater Good, I should say, takes a bit of a step back and pushes the world at us. I think because I was ready for that in Lesser Evil, I enjoyed it a lot more. I would really like to reread Greater Good and really pick up all those details, because one of the greatest things about this trilogy is it is another Zahn trilogy. It's not like what some people want to call the Canon Thrawn trilogy. And although, yes, those are 3 books that have Thrawn in them, Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason, as I said, the connections are a little bit more loose. There's not too much that builds from one book to the other. You can tell they weren't written as a trilogy. He was writing Thrawn and it was successful, so then he got the next book and then he got Treason. And they all just kind of fill in gaps, especially with Rebels having to tie in. He can't do too much. He can't do too many things that are too creative. Where if you read the Heir to the Empire trilogy, you know that from the first book, there's so many things that Zahn lays as the groundwork for how the trilogy is going to wrap up in The Last Command. There's so many threads that he just weaves so perfectly throughout all 3 books. And he does it here again. And especially with not just the Ascendancy stuff, but the stuff he's able to tie in from the first Thrawn book in canon. especially Thrawn Alliances, which I think gets a huge boost up from this trilogy, just with things that happen during the Anakin Skywalker Thrawn timeline, because that actually, as I said earlier, interconnects with Chaos Rising. There are so many things that he does so well to weave the story through that makes it so rewarding, especially if you've read all threes in a quick timeline. The first one did come out last fall, so if you've been reading these as they've come out, kind of like I did, I think you're going to be pretty satisfied with how this concludes. And it's a great, great ending for all the characters. I'm not going to spoil what happens. There are so many interesting things, and Thrawn has his machinations and the way he's able to solve things and figure things out. I mean, it's classic Thrawn, but within it, you've got a grander world, greater world that's really interesting to explore, and I really want to see more. So kind of to wrap this up, I want to conclude by just saying, get this book. It's really, really great. And if you were put off maybe by Greater Good, I know some people had similar problems to it as I did when it came out, where they're like, where is Thrawn? We want to see Thrawn. He's really kind of not doing anything of ultra importance in this. He doesn't really solve his he takes forever for him to solve his mystery. Maybe it doesn't feel as much like Thrawn as usual. I think those are mostly redeemed by Lesser Evil, because if you enjoy this world, if you like living in this world, it's really a fantasy world in Star Wars. It's like its own pocket universe. I think you're really going to like this. And if you're burned out by Star Wars canon, especially, I've said it a bunch of times on our show, Star Wars canon novels, a lot of them feel so similar. They're so similar plot structure wise, similar in the fact that they can't really tell anything that's super important in their storytelling. Thrawn Ascendancy solves all those problems by existing on its own. And I think if you're looking for something and you like the character of Thrawn, or if you don't know anything about Thrawn and you just kind of want to know who this character is and learn a little bit more about him, it's a great place to dive in. I think all three of these books are fantastic. Lesser Evil is my favorite, though. I think it is really, really great. And man, did it win me over with this whole world. And I really want to see what happens next. I have a video coming out, as I've been kind of teasing for a while, but I did want to finish this, about how to adapt the original Thrawn trilogy into canon, what to do with Thrawn in the Mandalorian timeline, and all this stuff. If you're going to want to check that out, it's coming out on Monday for sure this time. It is coming out on Monday. So you're going to want to check that out for all the details and more spoiler-filled thoughts on this. If Zahn wants to write more books in this Ascendancy world, in the Unknown Regions, I would really like to see them, even if Thrawn is not a part of this at all. If he's not even in the trilogy, that's fine. It could be in books that take place during Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason. I'm good with that during the era of the Empire. I want to see what happens to the Chiss Ascendancy, because now I'm almost as invested in the Chiss Ascendancy as I am in the Republic or the Empire or the Rebellion or the New Republic or whatever. This is a great, great world, and he's done such a great job fleshing it out. I don't want it to end with this trilogy. I want to see more. I want to learn more. And I really would love this to collide with our main universe. So overall, I mean, we never really given scores for books or for anything before. Maybe I'll start that now. I think out of 5, I would give this a 4.5. I'm genuinely serious. It's a long book, but it's really well paced. And if you give it the time and you're invested like I was with those other 2 books, I think you're going to love this. And if you love this world, you're going to be pretty satisfied with the way it ends. And you still are going to want more, because it is a really, really great book. And even though it took me a long time to read, I was never bored. I was never like, oh, I got to get through this page. It's taking forever. I've had books like that, especially with Star Wars before, that are far shorter than this, 200 pages shorter than this. And I've gone, oh, God, this is taking forever. This one is fast. It moves nicely. Characters are great. World building's the best Star Wars world building since Legends, probably, when the world wasn't really filled out. It's cool. It's creative. It's fun. It's Thrawn. You've got to read it. 4.5 out of 5. I'm starting that today for the Star Wars Lad book reviews. We're giving scores. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. As I said at the beginning, hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. If you haven't, hit the notification bell for Star Wars content 3 days a week. We post videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We do comics on Wednesdays and news and playthroughs on Friday if you would like to follow our KOTOR playthrough or Star Wars news or whatever. And then on Mondays, special topics. It's something new every single week. So you'll want to check out those videos on Mondays. Sonic just posted one yesterday about the Curse of the Star Wars prequel with video games. You'll want to check that out. It is the featured video on our channel. And then follow us on social media at Star Wars Lads on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You want to stay up to date with Star Wars Lads on all those platforms. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil, down in the comments, and whether you'd like to talk more. And stay tuned for Monday for the next Thrawn installment on Star Wars Lads, when I talk about how to adapt the Heir to the Empire trilogy. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.